Everything you need to know to get started using SQL. Now, SQL is a language which is used to interact with relational database management systems. And a relational database management system is basically just a software application which we can use to create and manage different databases. And so we're going to talk about all of this stuff in this course. We're going to start off with the basics. So we'll just look at what is a database. We'll talk about the different types of databases. We'll talk about what SQL is and what it actually means and how you can use it to create databases. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to install something called a relational database management system, which, like I said, is just software that we can use to manage a database. We're going to install a relational database management system called MySQL. And MySQL is one of the most popular database management systems for beginners and also just in general. And so MySQL is a great first system to learn. And so once we have that all installed, then we'll start writing SQL. And so we can write out little SQL code, little queries in order to create databases and create database tables and input information, retrieve information, and then we're going to get into writing SQL queries. And queries are used to query a database. So we'll create a database, we'll populate it with information, and I'll show you guys how you can write these little SQL queries to get specific pieces of information. So we'll start off with the basics, and we'll just learn all of the fundamentals, and then I'm going to show you guys some more advanced techniques to getting information out of a database. And finally, I'm going to show you guys how you can actually design database schemas. So a database schema is basically just like all of the different tables and all the different relations that the database is going to store. And if you don't understand what any of that means, don't worry, we're going to cover all of it. But this course will cover basically everything about SQL, all of the fundamentals, all of the things that you need to get started, and we'll also look at database design and schema design. So it's going to be a pretty awesome course. I'm excited to be bringing you guys this stuff, and just know that all of the code, all the stuff that's in this course is going to be available on the Draft Academy website, draftacademy.com. And there's also going to be some additional things on the website that isn't going to be in the course just because I didn't have time to cover all of it. So check out the website for more information. But without further ado, let's get into it. Let's learn SQL, which is one of the most popular languages for not only jobs, but just for developers in general. In this video, I'm going to give you guys a full introduction into databases. So we're not going to get too specific on any one point. Basically, I want to show you guys just what databases are in general. We're going to talk about how databases are used, why we use databases, and the different types of databases that you'll find out in the world. So this should basically just give you an introduction to databases in general. If you don't know anything about databases, then this video will kind of walk you through and get you up to speed with what you need to know so you can then go off and start learning how to use an actual database. So I just have a little PowerPoint slide here that I want to kind of walk you guys through, and we'll look at some different features of databases. So first question is, what is a database? You'll often see databases abbreviated as DB, so DB would stand for database. And really, a database is any collection of related information. What I'm showing you guys here is the absolute most general definition of this word. A database, really, if you want to get down to it, is just any collection of related information. So that could be something like a phone book, a shopping list, a to-do list, your 5 best friends, Facebook's user base. All of these are examples of databases. All of these are collections of information that store related stuff, right? So the phone book, right? This stores people's phone numbers, right? Their names and their phone numbers, right? It's a collection of related information. A to-do list, this stores a list of things that you want to do during the day, right? It's related information. Your 5 best friends, that's information, right? It's information that you're storing somewhere. You have, if I came up to you and asked you who your 5 best friends were, I'm sure you could list them off. That, in essence, is a database, right? It's a collection of related information. And then Facebook's user base, right? So all of the users that Facebook keeps track of and stores. That's another example of a database. So databases can be stored in different ways. So you can store a database on paper, right? If I had a shopping list or a to-do list, I might just scribble that down on a piece of paper. You can store a database in your phone. So your 5 best friends, for example. If I came up to you and I asked you, list off your 5 best friends, you probably don't have it written down somewhere, right? You don't have like an app on your phone that tells you who all your friends are, right? You just know that information in your mind naturally. And so that's another way that you can store a database. You can just store the information in your mind. You can store information on a computer, and this is probably the most common use case is people will create a database and they'll store all the information on their computer. The PowerPoint that we're looking at right now, this is an example of a database. It has related information on it, and I'm using it to teach this lesson. And then finally, like a comment section. So if you go down to the comment section of this video, that's a database, right? It's a general database that's storing comments for the video. So that really, in essence, is everything you need to know about databases to get started. It's a collection of related information that can be stored in different ways. So now we understand the very general definition. I want to kind of walk you guys through more specifically what we can do with databases. So over here I have another slide. It's computers plus databases equals heart. Now, the point I'm trying to drive home with this slide is that storing a database, storing a collection of related information on a computer is extremely useful, and computers are actually great for storing databases. So I have here 2 things. We have over here on the left Amazon versus a shopping list. So these are 2 examples of situations where we have a database, right? We kind of talked about how a shopping list is a database. It's a collection of related information, right? A collection of products that you want to buy from the store. Amazon.com is also a database, right? Amazon's storing all this product information, all this user information. They're storing reviews on the products, the prices of the products. They're storing all of this information. So let's take a look and we'll compare and contrast these two databases and we'll see why computers are the preferred medium for storing data. So Amazon.com keeps track of products, reviews, purchase orders, credit cards, users, media, etc. Amazon is keeping track of, so much information. Trillions of pieces of information need to be stored and readily available. Over here we have a shopping list. A shopping list keeps track of consumer products that need to be purchased, right? We're talking 10 to 20 pieces of information need to be stored and readily available. So Amazon, we need to store trillions of pieces of information. With the shopping list, we need to store 10 or 20. Both of these are databases, but the one we have trillions of stuff, the other one we have 10 to 20 things. And so over here on Amazon, the information on Amazon is extremely valuable and it's critical to Amazon.com's functioning, right? So the information that Amazon's storing in its database is absolutely essential. And another thing is that security is essential, right? Amazon stores people's personal information like social security number, credit card, address, phone. Like that information needs to be locked down and secure. A shopping list, on the other hand, the information is for convenience sake only, right? It's not absolutely necessary for shopping. Like if you, didn't have a shopping list, you could still go to the store and for the most part, you'd be able to find everything that you need. Also with the shopping list, security is just not important at all, right? If you drop your shopping list on the ground, if somebody else was to pick it up and look at it, it's like not a big deal. It's a shopping list.
Неприятно, конечно,
Finally, over here on Amazon, the information is stored on a computer. Whereas with the shopping list, the information is stored maybe on a piece of paper, or it could even just be stored in someone's memory, right? So maybe you just memorized your shopping list, and that's where you're storing your shopping list database. So what I'm trying to show you guys is that a database doesn't just have to be on a computer, and it doesn't just have to be like in your memory or on a piece of paper, right? Databases are in all of these different environments. But here's the thing. For an application like Amazon, storing information on something like a computer makes it really easy to store trillions of pieces of information and really easy to secure the data and make sure that security is taken care of. And it also makes it really easy to back up that information and duplicate that information and store that information on different computers. So the main point of this slide is that computers are great at keeping track of large amounts of information. And so going forward, we're going to be talking about how can we create databases on computers because computers are so good at storing that information. So let's talk about how we can go about creating databases on a computer. Now, a database could be as simple as like a text file where you store information, or it could be like an Excel file, right? A Microsoft Excel file. But generally, if you're going to be using a database with like an application, or you're going to be using a database to store huge amounts of information, a lot of times what people will do is they'll use special software which is designed to help you create and maintain a database. This is called database management systems. So a database management system is a special software program.
Короче, будем писать пометочки. Пометочки в ноутпаде будем писать. Короче, Database Management Systems. Это СУБДшки на русском, славянском, древлянском языке. Специальный софт, который помогает пользователям создавать и поддерживать ДБ. Первое. Упрощает. Как это менедж по-русски, блять? Распределение, не знаю, как-то, наверное, упрощает работу с большим количеством информации. Защищает информацию. Бэкапы. Импорт. Флэш. Или Импорт или экспорт данных. Что такое concurrency?
that helps users create.
Concurrency. Если это конкуренция, это мегавеб. Конкуренция. Такого. Вот is concurrency in database. Что это такое? User уникальная характеристика нулевой одновременно. Это получается, не знаю. Что там шестой?
Create and maintain a database.
Взаимодействие с софтверными приложениями.
On a computer. So it makes it really easy for us to manage large amounts of information. So if you're a company like Amazon and you have trillions of pieces of information that you need to keep track of, well, the database management system can make it pretty easy for you to store trillions of pieces of information, right? It's not like all that information is just in like some single text file. The database management system will make it really easy for you to store that. Database management systems can also handle security, so they can make it so only certain people with usernames and passwords can access the data. They'll also help you to back up your data and import and export data from other sources. So if you have, a bunch of information and you want to back it up, a database management system can help you do that. Database management systems can also interact with software applications. So, Amazon.com is a website and it's interacting with the Amazon database, which is stored most likely using a database management system. So you could write a program that could interact with the database management system. All right, so let's take a look at this quick little diagram that I have here. So we have Amazon over here, and this would be like Amazon.com. And Amazon is communicating with a database management system. And I don't work for Amazon, so I'm not 100% sure exactly how they're doing this. But for the most part, this is the general use case. So we have our database management system, which is this little box here.
То есть Amazon туда-сюда общается с УБДшкой для получения данных из базы данных.
So the database management system isn't the actual database. The database management system
Ну
is
понятно,
the
с
software
УБДшкой это не только
that
может
is
быть там
creating,
какой-нибудь
maintaining, updating,
просто клиент
deleting
на
information
питоне,
from
который
the
там может
actual
получать
database.
или
So
отдавать
Amazon.com will
информацию.
interact with the database management system in order to create, read, update, and delete
Ну это
information.
да, это
Right?
база.
So Amazon isn't creating or reading or updating this information directly. Amazon is telling the database management system to do that for it. And by going through the database management system, we can be sure that all the data is getting stored correctly and there's going to be no problems with the data. So let's talk about CRUD. And this is an acronym that you're going to hear a lot. CRUD. It stands for Create, Read, Update, and Delete. You'll also hear people call this Create, Retrieve, Update, and Delete. Now, CRUD represents the four main operations that we're going to be doing with the database. So you're going to be creating information in the database.
Базированная база.
You're going to be reading information from the database. So, retrieving or getting the information that you already stored in there. You're going to be updating the existing information, and you're going to be deleting the information that's already in there. And these are the core four operations that we want the database management system to perform for us. So any good database management system is going to be able to do all
Я лично
four
учу,
of these
типа, это
things.
SQL
So now
сейчас,
that we
тоже,
talked a
чтобы
little bit
делать
about
теорему
database
запроса в
management systems,
Django.
I want to talk to you guys about the
Просто
two main types
optimization
of
полнейшую
databases that
строить.
you'll find in computing. So the first is called a relational database. You also
Да,
hear
это
people
где
refer to these
все
as
на все
SQL
завязано.
databases or SQL databases. And then we also have what are called non-relational databases. And you'll hear people refer to non-relational databases as NoSQL or not just SQL databases. We're going to talk about what SQL or SQL is in a second. But I want to show you guys these two types. So a relational database, which we have over here on the left, organizes data into one or more tables. So each table has columns and rows, and a
Ну,
unique key
relational, где
identifies
все на
each
основе
row.
завязанности
Now,
какие-то common
relational
key,
databases
типа,
are by far the most popular types of databases.
организует.
And relational databases are going to store everything inside of these tables. So we'll organize all the data that we want to store inside of these predefined tables, and then we can just insert information into there. A relational database is a lot like an Excel spreadsheet. So if you've ever used a spreadsheet where we have columns and rows and we're storing information, that's essentially what a relational database is. And then over here on the right, we have non-relational databases. And a non-relational database is basically just any type of database that's not a relational database. So like I said, relational databases are by far the most popular type. And so because they're so popular, any other type of database that's not technically relational is just referred to as non-relational. And non-relational databases, it's very general. It's just because any database that's not relational is getting put into this category. So non-relational databases organize data in anything but a traditional table. So you'll have things like key value stores, documents, which would be like kind of like JavaScript object notation or like XML. They'll store data in graphs or even flexible tables. So really non-relational databases is a very general category. It's just anything that's not relational. So let's take a look real quick.
Так, хотелось бы все-таки... Ну, что такое non-relational, я понимаю, это всякие там MongoDB, какие-то там Fire, Fire, блять, Work, или как там эта хуйня гугловская называется. В принципе, что это, мне понятно. Организует. Данную таблицу общую какую-то там хранит в формате keyword, то есть ключ значения. Документы всякие. JSON, XML и т.д. Что еще там у него? Графы. Какие-то, блядь. Что такое flexible tables? Tables, DB, что это? Handle database unstructured data. Понятно. Не структурированная база данных. Если что, я не аутист, значит, не то, что не аутист, не даун, я читать умею. Просто иногда сложно. Сложно немного написать такие слова длинные. Как успехи? Я тоже учу SQL, но в стопиках. Так, SQL. Ну вот, этого мужика. Сейчас, где он тут? Вот этот мужик. freecodecamp. Просто на YouTube-канале, блядь. 5 лет назад вышел ролик, 17 миллионов просмотров. Ты уже работаешь или еще в процессе? У меня сейчас Python тоже. У меня Python, Django, React. Вообще я этот SQLite использую, мне не очень это нравится, и поэтому я, чтобы заапгрейдиться, хочу сейчас подучить SQL, чтобы потом ORM, и знаешь, ORM в Django есть. Вот я хочу для этого учить этот SQL. Насчет степика не знаю, мне вообще, я знаю, что такое степик, но не знаю, как-то мне этот формат. Не то, что формат не нравится, формат как формат, типа, не знаю, блядь, название у них какое-то странное, я бы не стал доверять месту с названием степик, но не суть важно. Учей-то просто на ютубе ролик, блядь, просто на ютубе ролик. В принципе, это такой essential курс, поэтому я думаю, похуй, за 5 лет ничего особо измениться не должно. Скорее в процессе работы, да, потому что, точнее, в процессе учебы. Мне 16 лет, я не могу на работу устроиться. Ну, кстати, типа, ну, я пробовал собеседоваться, у меня получалось проходить собесы, но просто, ну, я не могу бросить школу, мне нужно туда как минимум присутствовать, там, и учиться и ходить туда каждый день, поэтому, как бы, пока работать не вариант, поэтому пока что на себя работаю. Ты на бэк учишься или на full stack? Ну, вообще хотелось бы только на бэкэнде учиться, ну, то, что учиться. Ну, хотелось бы заниматься только бэкэндом, но поскольку у меня фронта особо никакого нет, я просто, ну, блядь, еще и фронтенд изучаю. Ну, в принципе, нормально, типа, сомнительно, но окей, как сказал Барик Тиньков.
General category. It's just anything that's not relational. So let's take a look real quick at a relational database, or you'll hear people, like I said, refer to this as a SQL database, SQL. So over here we have two examples of tables. So this would be basically how we would store our
Ну,
information in
понятно,
those.
тут отличие в том, что это вот ID, вот этот вот тот самый уникальный ключ, идентифицирующий каждую ячейку. А здесь его нет, хотя здесь юзернейм, видимо, выполняет этот...
Relational database. So over here I have a student table.
А, это все, это понятно, это и есть. Просто в данной табличке это ID-шник выполняет функцию этого идентифицирующего unique ключа, а здесь это юзернейм, понятно, это то и то SQL, понятно все, в общем.
And this student table might store individual students. So you'll see over here we have an ID, a name, and a major. So for every single one of my students, I have an entry just like this. And you'll notice over here, I'm giving each of these entries an ID, and that
Ну, понятно,
ID
здесь
will
у него unique
uniquely
поле, это
identify
ID-шник, а
that
здесь
row
юзернейм,
in the
типа
table.
база.
Then over here we have a users table. So maybe you're, creating users for your application. So they have a username, a password, and then an email. Right, so the username is something that's going to be unique. It's something that uniquely identifies each row in the table, and then we're also storing like password and email. So we kind of talked about how relational databases store data in tables, and when we want to create a relational database, we can use a relational database management.
Так, чё еще раз? Эти вот relational, короче. Relational databases. Мы наши SQL-очки. Так. Реляционная база, так, ну, в общем, реляционная, ну, понятно, relational database management systems. Ну, это, короче, СУБДшки, видимо, только какие-то немножко специфицированные под вот эти вот штуки, под реляционные базы данных. Так вот. Помогают пользователям создавать, это правильно, создавать и поддерживать реляционные БДшки. Ну, это MySQL, самый известный, наверное. Oracle, PostgreSQL, MariaDB и так далее. Структуризированный query language. Вот сам язык, собственно, structured. Ну, query это запрос, просто структуризированный язык запросов, это SQL. Стандартизированный язык для взаимодействия с RDBMS. Короче, может выполнять рад операции, так же как и административные задачи. Создан, хотя скорее используется для создания таблиц и структур. Класс. Используемый для одной не всегда. Ну, понятно. То есть, как бы, есть, ну, допустим, какие-то фишечки там у какой-нибудь PostgRE, если ты к ним обращаешься в своем вот этом вот SQL-коде, то понятное дело, что они в MySQL не работают.
Management system. And a relational database management system, or an RDBMS, is just a database management system that helps you create and maintain a relational database. And some of the most popular are MySQL, Oracle, Postgres SQL, and Maria database. There's a bunch of these that are, extremely popular. And relational database management systems use something
Extremely
called
popular.
structured query language, or SQL. And SQL is a standardized language for interacting with relational database management systems. So remember, a relational database management system is just a software application that we can use in order to create, maintain, and do different things to our relational database. And SQL, or structured query language, is the language that we can use to interact with those relational database management systems. So we can use SQL to perform CRUD operations as well as other administrative tasks like user management, security, backup, etc. And we can use SQL to define tables and structures. So a relational database
Чувачок
uses
просто
tables
читает
in order to
презентацию.
organize its information, and we can use SQL to
Ну ладно.
define those tables and then insert information into those tables. And SQL is a standardized language, which means it's pretty much used on every relational database management system. However, different relational database management systems will implement SQL just a little bit differently. So not all SQL code that you use on one relational database management system will
Правда, к
port over to
сожалению.
another one without slight modifications. So now let's talk a little bit about non-relational databases. And a non-relational databases is just anything that's not relational. So a non-relational database stores data in anything but a static
Ну
table. So I'm
понятно,
showing you guys a couple different
JSONчик,
examples
JSONчик,
of non-relational databases and how
JSONчик.
they would store data. So over here we have a document
Фронтендика
database,
получаем эту
and
темку.
this would store information inside of like little objects or documents. So we're talking about things like JSON or XML. Basically, I think JSON is kind of a very popular format, and that's kind of what I have up here. So JSON is JavaScript object notation. So there's a lot of non-relational databases that will store data in documents just like this. They'll also store data in graphs. So over here we have graphs, and there's like these little nodes, and then there's connecting lines between the nodes, which would represent like relationships. And then over here we have a key value hash. So we would have a key and it gets mapped to a value. And that could really be anything. It could be a string, it could be JSON.
Вот эта база, вот это вот здесь, вот, кстати, ничего интересного. Получается, что у нас же в Django используется SQL, там, но этот SQLite, как он называется, MySQL, неважно, короче, но по сути мы используем вот эту вот СУБДшки реляционные. Получается, что когда мы для фронтенда типа сериализаторы используем, то по сути мы нашу реляционную базу данных просто десериализуем в вот эту вот нереляционную базу данных.
Graph, it could
И
be anything
отдаем в
like
виде
that.
JSON.
So these are just three common exampos of what NoSQL or non-relational databases
Саламчик, саламчик, салам
might look like,
пополам.
or how they might store their data. And just like with relational databases, we can have non-relational database management.
Серега, тут уроки просто в школе. Вот, просто уроки в школе провожу. Так. Так, ну, SQL, ну, это всякие там эти, MongoDB. Так. Помогает пользователям создавать и поддерживать реляции онлайн-ДБ. Ну, это там у нас, да, MongoDB, DynamoDB, какие-то спортики, видимо, создали эту базу данных. Cassandra, вот, Firebase, вот то, что говорил Угловский. Эту темку мы знаем, пробовали, покушали. Да, Серега, ты модер, да, ты модер. Так. Специфика имплементация. Любая нереализационная ДБ попадает в эту категорию. Так как нет стандартизированного языка запросов. Большинство вот этих вот Not Relational Database Management Systems будут включать их собственно. Ну да, я помню, когда Дроиде писал. Для исполнения крат и других и административных операций в БД.
Systems. And these help users to create and maintain non-relational databases. So some examples would be MongoDB,
Серега,
DynamoDB,
чекни ТГ,
Apache,
кстати.
Cassandra, Firebase.
Проверял там.
There's a bunch of these popular NoSQL databases that have been sprouting up over the last decade or so. And these are all implementation specific. So unlike relational database management systems, where we have SQL, which is just a standard language that can interact with all of them, there isn't a standard language for interacting with non-relational database management systems. So generally, the non-relational database management system will implement their own language for performing CRUD and administrative operations on the database. So now that we've looked at the different types of databases, I want to talk to you guys about some core concepts within databases. So one of the most common things that you're going to be doing are queries. So a database query is a request that's made to the database management system for specific information. So you'll hear the word query thrown around a lot. And generally a query is you're just asking the database management system to give you some information. So as a database's structure becomes more and more complex, it becomes more difficult to get the specific pieces of information that we want. And if you have a very complex database layout or schema, then getting a specific piece of information can be a little bit tricky. And that's why we write database queries. So you can...
Так, что такое database queries? Это получается запросы в БД. Так. Что за queries? Это очередь же, да? Сейчас query. А что такое? Запросы. Это... Блять, а что такое request? Тоже запрос. Это не знаю. Запрос, блядь. Это запрос в СУБД для специальной информации. Когда структура ПД становится все более сложной, становится проблематично получить конкретные данные, которые мы хотим. Например, Google Search. Это тоже query. Так. Тупой инсерт включился. Вообще именно свайп.
You could write a very complex database query, which in a lot of ways is like a program, if you've ever used a programming language before. And that query will then instruct the relational database management system to grab a specific piece or specific pieces of information from the database. So a good way to think of a query is it's kind of like a Google search, right? So if I go on Google and I would generally type in the specific information that I want, and then Google would give me the information that matches that search query. That's a lot like a database query, except with a database query, we're not going to be writing the query in English like we would with Google. So I can, go up to my Google search bar and I can type something in English or Spanish or whatever language you speak. But with a relational database management system, we have to write our queries using either SQL or a specific language that's meant for that database management system. So let's wrap this up real quick. We kind of covered a lot of the main points with databases. So a database is any collection of related information. It's a very general term. And computers are great for storing databases because computers are really fast. They can store lots of pieces of information and they can handle.
Короче, ребята, стрим прекращается.